Today, let's break down the stats of the newest weapon, the RAAL LMG. After a really long wait, it is finally here. So, does it perform as well as we'd hoped? Let's find out. As usual, let's talk about the most optimal build for this weapon. In this build, we're using the RAAL monocore suppressor, 32-inch RAAL line breaker barrel, tack laser, VOK 3.0x optic, and the FFS oblique. We're using the longest barrel because it really does need the help with the bullet velocity. And if you want a bit more zoom, there is a special optic this can use. I think the icon and name are bugged since this seems to be the one of the Holger, but it is actually a 4x zoom optic and it has a built-in rangefinder. It only comes at the penalty of 1 extra frame than 3x optic, so I think it would be worth it if you think you can handle the extra visual recoil. I do need to say though that the rangefinder only works to about 210 meters. So let's get to the stats, starting with mobility. Its ADS time is 420 milliseconds, which is pretty high. Its reload and reload add times are 8.03 seconds from empty and 7.65 if you leave one bolt in the mag, which is quite a long time, but at least its mag cap is 100. Its movement and sprint speeds are some of the lowest I've ever seen. This is painfully slow. And its ADS strafe speed is extremely slow as well, basically heavy sniper rifle level. Its sprint out and tac sprint out times are below average, but this is expected for a not so mobile weapon. And its aiming stability is 2T, which isn't the greatest thing for a long range weapon, but it is still doable. And its bullet velocity is 1111.1 meters per second, which is a little bit lower than I would hope since this is a very low mobility LMG. And its rate of fire is 9.25 rounds per second or 555 rounds per minute, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's not the fastest either. So it gets a mobility score of 22. Its recoil is mostly vertical. It does snake its way as it goes up, but it is easy to control due to its lower rate of fire. While you can pretty easily reach out to 135 meters, it has a lot of visual recoil, so that takes a little bit more concentration. Therefore, it gets a recoil score of 45. Now for its damage. It has a drop-off point at 40 meters, and you'll find that under the first damage range, it is extremely consistent. Its headshot TTK isn't that great, but its upper torso, lower torso, and limb TTKs are average, and thankfully, extremely consistent. In the second damage range, its headshot and upper torso TTKs are above average and really competitive, but its lower torso and limb TTKs are average, so you really want to get those upper torso and headshots. So it gets a damage score of 60. And when we add up all the scores, we get a final score of 127. As some of you may know, 127 is a pretty good score for a long range weapon. So for all the nerfs going around, does this mean that the RAAL is now maybe part of the meta? And I gotta say, probably not honestly. The biggest problem is its mobility. I know it's an LMG, but man, that mobility is probably the worst out of all the LMGs. Okay, maybe not as bad as the MG34, but still, it's really bad. Its recoil is also a slight problem. It has a lot of visual recoil, which makes it harder to use past 135 meters. Sure, you can tap fire, and you could get away with it since you don't need that many shots to kill, but at that point, why not just use something like the FAL? You could switch out the oblique grip for something like the Commando 4 grip and reduce that visual recoil, but I wouldn't do that since your ADS time would just go even higher. The thing about this gun is that it's really hard to recommend when the PKM exists. If any of you guys use the PKM, you would know that all these attachments are pretty much identical to the PKMs. And when you look at its stats, it really does seem like a worse PKM. Sure, you pretty much need one less shot to kill, but that one less shot to kill doesn't matter when your rate of fire is so much worse. The PKM gets a much better TTK thanks to its buffs that it got recently, and since it has better recoil and a better rate of fire, it's just a better weapon overall. And even its mobility is better, but there's one thing that I gotta say about both of these weapons. Their reload times are really bad. The PKM has a reload time of around 9 seconds and the RAAL around 8. Both of these can get you killed if you get third-partied after a fight or if you're just really needing to reload in the middle of a firefight. And you can't just switch out your tac laser for something like sleight of hand because you really need that aim down sight time, and even if you think you don't, trust me, you do, but more importantly, that aiming stability, which lets you use your weapon at extremely long ranges. If you remove any of these attachments from the RAAL, you lose pretty much all your ability to fight at longer ranges. So as much as it hurts me to say this, no, the RAAL will not be meta at all. If anything, the PKM and the Bruin could come back now that people are maybe looking at LMGs a little bit different, but it's unlikely because the extremely long reload times. The RAAL really needs a damage buff in order to be considered useful because with all of its stats, it's just not worth running right now. So don't rush to unlock it because as of now, don't worry, it's not overpowered and they're not going to be nerfing it anytime soon. But if you want to run around and use a unique weapon with a really awesome scope with a rangefinder, then the RAAL is a pretty cool option. So that's the RAAL LMG. Have you unlocked it and tried it out yet? If so, what'd you think about it? And if there's any weapon, build, or part of the game you want me to break down, let me know, and you may see it on the next Community Wednesday. But that's the video. If you enjoyed it or it's helped you in any way, let me know by leaving a like. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. And if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.